Welcome to Kevin Dale Photography, where I take you on my journey through photography. On today's episode, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the LUMIX 85mm f1.8. I'm pleased to announce the release of my Capture One and Lightroom presets, Metamorphic Portraits, The Sound of Silver, and Rangefinder. These are all available for purchase at my website. Go to kevindalephotography.com or check out a link in the description below. And now, on to today's episode. Welcome to today's episode. If you're not familiar with Kevin Dale Photography, we do gear reviews, tips, techniques, and tutorials, and sometimes we dive into film. If any of that sounds appealing to you, click the subscribe button below. I want to thank all of you who are returning to this channel, and for all of you who are coming to this channel for the first time, welcome. If you are new to this channel, I ask for donations to the organization BIG, which is an organization that helps intellectually disabled adults adapt to jobs in the real world. I'd appreciate your donations there. And for all of you who donate to the Super Thanks link, it helps grow this channel. It helps me acquire more equipment that I can then test out and help you with your buying decisions. But to today's episode, we're going to talk about the 85mm 1.8 from LUMIX. And of course, if you are familiar with the full frame world of focal lengths, 85 is pretty ideal for portraiture. Being that I am a portrait photographer, I'm going to test this guy out on plenty of portraits. I'll work with some agency models. I'm also going to conduct some interviews and use this as the tight shot in conjunction with either my 50mm 1.8 or my 20-60 for the wider shot. And I'm not just going to stop there. I'm going to use it for street photography, see if it has like a photojournalistic look to it, because I think 1.8 can still get some pretty good isolation from distance. But one thing that's curious about this lens is it has a maximum aperture of f1.8. And when you look at the line of LUMIX lenses, when you go to their upper echelon, they don't have an 85mm 1.2 or 1.4. So this is technically their flagship 85mm lens, simply because there's an absence of one that has a brighter maximum aperture. So we'll see if this guy is worthy of super high-end professional results, but before we put it through its paces, let's talk about the specs. The Panasonic LUMIX 85mm f1.8 is an autofocus lens for the L-mount full-frame system. Its aperture range is f1.8 to f22. Its optical design is 9 elements and 8 groups, and it has 9 rounded aperture blades. Its minimum focusing distance is 2.62 feet or 0.8 meters. It has a magnification of 0.13. Its angle of view is 29 degrees. It does not have image stabilization. It is dust and splash resistant. It has a front filter thread size of 67mm. Its dimensions are 2.9 by 3.2 inches or 73.6 by 82mm. It has a weight of 12.52 ounces or 355 grams, and it comes in at a street price of $599 US. So those are some pretty impressive specs. I do like how light this lens is. Even though it's got kind of a plasticky barrel, it does still feel pretty stout. Of course, all this only matters in the real world, so let's take it on our first test right now. Okay, so for our first test of the day, we're gonna do some street photography, and you probably don't think 85mm when you think street photography. I personally like to shoot 35mm in full frame for street, but 85mm does give you a nice photojournalistic look. It's golden hour here in Harlingen, Texas, and if you're not familiar with Harlingen, it's a border town, so we're here on the border of Mexico and the United States. And because it is golden hour, I think that this 85mm, or at least I hope, is going to give me some beautiful color reproduction. And that's exactly what we intend to find out. I'm also going to see how well it works in conjunction with the autofocus on my S9. So without further ado, let's shoot some street. Using the 85mm in conjunction with the autofocus on my S9 in controlled environments like you see right here, It did pretty well. However, when I got out into the open, you see as I'm shooting these palm trees, it always seemed to go past the target and then reacquire it as it swept back toward the camera. Because of the degree at which it missed, I can't declare the autofocus with this lens to be perfect. Moving on to the minimum focusing distance though, I found it to be quite useful. I could get right up to things. Wide open, it looked gorgeous, so I'd say the bokeh is a big selling point of this lens. A lot of times people don't gravitate toward 85mm on video, but when I do interviews of people, just like with stills, I feel like it's perfect for that tight headshot. You can see right here, I use the 85mm for my tight shot, and then I use my 20-60 for my wide shot, and I felt like it made a good A-B focal length combination. I also used the lens for gimbal work. I was doing some headshots for a model for her video digitals, and I think it did a fantastic job here. And then I also used it for some B-roll on some of my own episodes where I was doing a review of a Viltrox flash, and I felt like that tighter focal length just kind of gave it a more documentary or maybe a photojournalistic vibe. So for video work, I think 85mm is a pretty good choice and definitely something to consider adding to your arsenal. What was that? You wanted to see how an 85mm full frame lens does on portraits? Well, I'm a portrait photographer, so I guess I should probably show you that. Thankfully, I took this guy with me on several shoots over the past few months, and I'm going to show you the results of those right now. All right, you've seen me use the 85mm f1.8 on a trip to the Texas-Mexico border for several professional model portfolios here in Austin, Texas, and I even took a few shots of the Rockies in Colorado. I've also used it for B-roll video and as my tight shot for interviews. I've reviewed several telephoto lenses on this channel, and I have a pretty good sense of what to make of a good one. So not everything about this lens is amazing. Let's talk about a few things I wish they got a little better. The autofocus on this lens is pretty inconsistent. It's pretty slow. In controlled environments, it usually locks focus pretty well, and it doesn't stand out in a bad way. However, in backlit situations or tricky lighting situations, it struggles to find focus. For stills paired with my S9, it feels slow to react. I did, however, find the focus to be a little less of an issue on video. So what does that mean? If you're considering considering this lens for fast-paced situations with challenging lighting, it might not meet your expectations. But if you're a portrait photographer, and I suspect most of you watching this are, the autofocus is good enough for those kinds of shoots in most situations. This lens doesn't have image stabilization. This is definitely nitpicking, but some of you out there are nitpicky, so you'll say it's a con even if it really isn't. Personally, this doesn't bother me because Lumix cameras have in-body image stabilization, which is the best in the business in my opinion, but I definitely did have to mention that it lacked lens stabilization. All right, so now let me tell you about why I think a lot of you should get this lens. This lens is sharp. From f1.8 to f2.8, the corners are a little softer, but let's be real, if you're shooting an 85mm at those apertures, your corners are going to be blurry anyway due to depth of field. So does corner sharpness even matter in this case? I'd say no. Still, for the corner sharpness nerds out there, it does get noticeably sharper around f2.8. I love the color reproduction on this lens, and the vignetting wide open, I didn't find it to be that bad at all. Outside of a tiny bit of lateral chromatic aberration, there's really not much to complain about when it comes to image quality. And honestly, that bit of chromatic aberration is pretty minor and pretty typical for a telephoto lens at this price point. I like the size of the manual focus ring on this lens. I found it easy to dial in, and I like the size and throw of the ring. For videographers, the entire line of 1.8S lenses, including this 85mm, share the same size, similar weight, and identical 67mm front filter thread. That means that if you build a kit around them, you only need to carry one filter size for your shoots. Plus, because the lenses are so similar in size and weight, swapping them out on a gimbal is a breeze, requiring little to no rebalancing. While this lens barrel does have a plasticky feel, I don't see it as a negative. Modern plastics have come quite a long way. They're durable, reliable in the field, and offer the benefit of lighter weight compared to metal. Metal can also dent. The value of this lens is undeniable. I did say during the specs that this lens goes for $599, but that's rarely the case. It's almost always found for much less than that. Most 85mm full-frame lenses are significantly more expensive in reality. A good comparison is the Canon RF 85mm f2, which is roughly equivalent in the Canon system. It sells for around $600 and only opens to f2 compared to the f1.8 maximum aperture of this Lumix 85mm. You can often find this 85mm f1.8 for under $400 on rebate. I even got mine thrown in for free when I bought my second S9. So if you're considering switching to Lumix, definitely check their rebates on their website. You may end up getting this lens for nothing. So let's summarize my thoughts on the Lumix S 85mm 1.8. Is this lens a flagship for the Lumix line? Probably not. The autofocus performance leaves a bit to be desired, it lacks full weather sealing, and its f1.8 maximum aperture will probably leave many stills photographers wanting more. If you're spending $3,000+ on a flagship Lumix camera, like the S1R2, you're likely expecting a weather-sealed f1.2 or f1.4 lens with top-tier autofocus to match, and currently, Lumix doesn't offer one. Your alternative? You'll have to go pick up something like a Sigma Art, which is also an excellent choice, but it's a little bit more expensive. That said, I'm a professional portrait photographer who shoots both Canon RF and Fuji GFX. If we're talking strictly about image quality, those systems do offer better optics. Pretty noticeable if you pixel peep, but honestly, it's not something most clients will ever notice, especially if they're not ordering large prints. In my professional opinion, this is still a professional lens. I also do want to offer a little pushback on the objections about its maximum aperture. If you're after a 1.2 or 1.4 lens purely for that silky bokeh, that's totally understandable. But with modern Lumix full-frame cameras featuring dual native ISO, the light performance is actually less of a concern. Shooting at ISO 640 or 4000 and f1.8 with a camera like the S9 will still give you a clean, bright image in most scenarios. So, Choosing 1.2 or 1.4 solely based on low light capability doesn't make a lot of sense in many situations, especially with the extra size and weight it would add to your camera. I will say though that for videographers, as long as you're not experiencing crazy unpredictable light that may mess with your autofocus, I think this lens is a home run for video. Its size, its consistency with the other lenses in the 1.8S line, and its lightweight make it an excellent addition to your video rig. So who should buy this lens? Because it shares the consistent size, weight, and 67 front filter thread size as its 1.8 siblings, this is an excellent choice for videographers. If you're shooting videos of people, it's ideal for those tight interview shots. For stills photography, it's obviously a portrait lens. In this episode, you saw dozens of professional images of models who actually use these shots for their agency portfolios. The lens consistently delivered professional level image quality. I also brought this lens with me on a trip to Colorado, and while I didn't get to shoot it that much since I was mainly reviewing other lenses, the few images I did capture reminded me how refreshing it can be to use a telephoto lens on landscapes. As long as you avoid heavy rain, it's a solid option for landscape photography. Its limitations are easy to work around, and it's absolutely a professional grade lens that can make you money if you're shooting on the LUMIX system. I've personally made money shooting clients with this lens, and they love the results. If it's good enough for professional work, it's probably good enough for most of you watching this episode. That does it for today's episode. Do you own this 85mm 1.8? Is your copy of this lens as slow on the autofocus as mine, but does it also produce as sharp images as mine? Tell me about it in the comments below. And if you're a fan of this channel, I humbly ask you to click the subscribe button below. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.